It was called the right arm of the free world. A rifle that armed over 90 nations across every continent, every battlefield, every ideology. Forged in the ashes of World War II, born from the dream of a united Europe, and later turned against itself. From the jungles of Vietnam to the deserts of the Middle East, from Rhodesia to the Falklands, one weapon became the symbol of the modern soldier. Elegant, reliable, brutal. This is the story of the FN FAL, the battle rifle that defined an era, changed alliances, and became the backbone of Cold War combat. A weapon that didn't just fire bullets, it fired the first shots of a divided world. In 1945, Europe lay in ruins, cities burned, empires crumbled, and armies that once ruled continents were now ghosts of their former glory. But amid the wreckage, a new world was being born, one divided not by trenches, but by ideology. The Cold War was coming, and with it, a new kind of soldier, and a new kind of weapon. Belgium was small, battered, and overlooked. Yet inside the quiet town of Herstal, a team of engineers at Fabrique Nationale de Herstal, FN, began dreaming of a rifle that would unify the armies of post-war Europe. Their vision, a single weapon that could serve across nations, languages, and borders. A rifle built not for conquest, but for survival in a world split between East and West. At the center of this dream was one man, Dieudonné Saïve. A genius who had once worked beside John Moses Browning himself, Saïve had seen firsthand the devastation of outdated weapons and divided supply chains. He believed the next rifle had to be modern, modular, and universal. Not a relic of the past like the bolt actions of World War II, but a new breed. Fast, precise, adaptable. His early designs began as the Fusil automatique léger, or light automatic rifle. The concept was revolutionary, a lightweight, self-loading rifle that could handle the emerging intermediate cartridges of the future. But in 1946, no one could agree on what the future looked like. The British wanted a smaller caliber, the experimental 280 British, optimized for accuracy and control. The Americans, meanwhile, insisted on full power. The 7.62 by 1mm NATO round, a modern descendant of the 30-06 Springfield. Politics, pride, and ideology collided in steel and brass. Saïve designed his rifle to adapt to both visions. It could fire intermediate rounds or full rifle cartridges. It could be selective fire or semi-automatic. It could fit the hands of any soldier, from Europe to Africa to Asia. In every sense, it was a rifle without borders. But as the Iron Curtain fell across Europe, cooperation shattered. The Americans pushed their own agenda, NATO standardization under their rules, their ammunition, their rifles. The dream of a united European firearm began to fracture. Yet the FN team pressed on, testing prototypes, refining mechanisms, perfecting balance. By the early 1950s, the rifle had evolved into something extraordinary, sleek, reliable, and precise. Its gas-operated system allowed it to function in mud, sand, or snow. Its adjustable gas regulator made it adaptable to any climate or ammunition, and its elegant lines and smooth recoil made it a joy to fire. Soldiers who tested it in trials across Europe and Canada called it the best rifle in the world. But politics would decide its fate. In Washington, generals looked east and saw the rise of the Soviet AK-47. The arms race had begun, and standardization meant power. America wanted its allies to follow suit, and that meant adopting their round, their system, their control. For Belgium and Saïve, it was a choice. surrender their dream of a European rifle, or adapt it to survive in an American-led alliance. And so, reluctantly, the FAL way toys reborn, chambered for the NATO 7.62 by 51mm cartridge. The dream of unity had faded, but in its place emerged something far more powerful, a rifle ready to arm the free world. By 1953, the world had split in two. On one side stood the Soviet Union, iron-fisted, relentless, spreading its doctrine through revolution and the barrel of an AK-47. On the other, the United States, the new arsenal of democracy, racing to arm its allies before the balance tipped. Caught in between were the nations of Europe, too weak to fight alone, too proud to be absorbed. They needed strength. They needed identity. And the weapon that would give them both was the FN FAL. Belgium's engineers at Fabrique Nationale worked with purpose and quiet defiance. The Americans had chosen their own path. The M14 rifle, a wooden-stocked echo of the old Garand, chambered for NATO's standardized 7.62 by 51mm round. But the M14 was heavy, complex, and ill-suited for modern, fast-paced warfare. The world was changing, yet the U.S. clung to the past. FN, meanwhile, was building the future. Dieudonné Saïve had taken his early FAL prototypes and perfected them into a rifle that was sleek, balanced, and unstoppable. Its heart was a gas-operated piston system, adjustable with precision, allowing the rifle to run clean in the mud of Korea, the sand of the Middle East, or the jungles of Africa. Its lines were elegant, its controls intuitive. It was a rifle made by soldiers for soldiers. In 1954, the FAL was ready. Britain tested it against its own designs and declared it the winner. Canada adopted it as the C1 rifle. Australia followed with the L1A1 SLR, a semi-automatic variant. Soon, West Germany, the Netherlands, and dozens more joined in. Within a decade, over 90 nations would carry some form of the FN FAL bracing. No rifle in history had spread so far, so fast. It earned a new title, the right arm of the free world. In the propaganda wars of the Cold War, this phrase meant everything. To hold a FL was to declare allegiance, not to a country, but to an idea. Freedom, resistance, unity. While Soviet soldiers marched with the AK-47, its rough, rugged simplicity symbolizing the communist ideal, Western soldiers stood with the FAL, a precision instrument representing discipline, engineering, and the promise of modernity. The rifle became an icon. In the hands of British paratroopers, it thundered in the jungles of Malaya and the sands of Aden. In Africa, it armed the fledgling armies of post-colonial nations, Rhodesia, South Africa, and Congo. In the Middle East, it was wielded by both allies and enemies, its reliability earning respect from every side. The FAL was everywhere. From NATO drills in Germany to rebel trenches in Angola, a single design connecting a fractured world. Its presence was more than symbolic. The FAL was a force multiplier, a rifle that allowed smaller nations to stand against superpowers with dignity. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. The free world might be divided by language, culture, and distance, but through the FL, it spoke with one voice. But while the West embraced it, a new kind of warfare was brewing, one that would test the FAL's strength, its philosophy, and its place in history. For the next chapter of the Cold War would not be fought in Europe, but in the dense, humid jungles of Asia. By the early 1960s, the world was no longer divided by oceans. It was divided by ideology, and Vietnam became its proving ground. The jungles of Southeast Asia were thick, unforgiving, and merciless. Rain turned trails into rivers, rifles into rust. In this brutal crucible, every weapon was tested, not just for accuracy or power, but for survival. The FN FAL, the pride of the free world, entered this new battlefield with confidence. It had conquered deserts, tundra, and savannas. Surely, the jungle would be no different. But Vietnam was not a battlefield of open lines and measured tactics. It was chaos. Bushes in the mist, shadows moving between trees, the enemy unseen but always there. In the hands of South Vietnamese and Australian troops, the FL, designated the L1A1 self-loading rifle, proved deadly accurate and devastating at range. Its 7.62 by 51 mm NATO round could cut through foliage, walls, and even light cover, hitting hard and fast. A single hit could end a fight instantly. But power has a price. The FAL was heavy. Loaded with a full magazine and accessories, it weighed nearly 5 kilograms, a burden in the suffocating heat. Its long barrel and full-sized cartridge made it unwieldy in close-quarters jungle fighting. Each soldier could carry fewer rounds, and automatic fire, though possible, was punishing to control. In open battle, the FAL was unmatched. In the jungle, it was overkill. Meanwhile, the enemy carried something smaller, simpler, and far deadlier in these conditions: the AK-47. Short, light, forgiving of dirt and neglect, the Kalashnikov thrived where the FAL struggled. It fired a lighter 7.62 by per 39 mm round, less powerful but easier to control, with magazines twice as numerous and rifles half as fussy. The contrast was stark: the Western world's precision rifle versus the Eastern Bloc's instrument of endurance. American observers took note. They realized that modern combat was changing. The age of the full-power battle rifle was ending. Speed, mobility, and volume of fire mattered more than raw range or stopping power. The jungle had rewritten the rulebook. From this revelation, the M16 was born: lightweight, high capacity, and firing an intermediate 5.5 mm round. It was everything the FAL was not: small, fast, and suited for endless movement. For the FL, this was the beginning of decline, not because it failed, but because the battlefield had evolved. Its strengths, accuracy, power, range, mattered less in the face of ambush warfare and asymmetric tactics. The world no longer wanted a rifle for soldiers standing in formation. It wanted one for soldiers hiding in trees. And yet, even as the U.S. shifted to the M16, countless nations stood by their FALs. To them, it remained a symbol of authority, craftsmanship, and control. It was the rifle of nations, not insurgents, the tool of governments, not revolutionaries. Vietnam proved one thing beyond doubt: technology could change. Tactics could change, but legacy, that was earned. And the FN FAL's legacy was just beginning to echo beyond the jungles of Asia, to the deserts of the Middle East and the battlefields of Africa, where it would once again be tested, not against ideology, but against its own legend. By the 1970s, the world was on fire. Empires had crumbled, colonies had risen, and 1,000 new nations were learning what it meant to stand alone. From the deserts of the Middle East to the savannas of Africa, wars of independence and ideology swept across continents, and in nearly every photograph, every faded reel of combat footage, one rifle stood out under the blazing sun. The FN FAL, once the pride of NATO, had found a new purpose. It was no longer just the right arm of the free world. It was the right arm of everyone: governments, rebels, mercenaries, and freedom fighters alike. It crossed borders as easily as belief. It armed both the oppressor and the oppressed. Its polished walnut and parkerized steel became a universal language, the dialect of power. In Rhodesia, it was the rifle of survival. Rhodesian light infantry units wielded the FAL with deadly precision during the Bush War, fighting guerrilla forces across vast, unforgiving terrain. Each rifle was customized, battle-worn, and trusted like a brother. Soldiers swore by its reliability, a weapon that would not jam, not break, not fail. Their FALs became symbols of defiance and of isolation as sanctions cut the country off from the world. To the Sioux, South Africa built its own version, the R1. Manufactured under license, it became a cornerstone of the apartheid regime's military might. Yet the same rifle found its way into the hands of those fighting against that very system, smuggled across borders, carried by insurgents in Angola, Mozambique, and Namibia. In one conflict, the FAL defended the status quo. In another, it burned it down. In the Middle East, its story was no less dramatic. Israel, one of the first adopters, carried the FAL through the Suez Crisis and the Six-Day War. Its accuracy and reliability earned the respect of the IDF until the rifle met its nemesis in the scorching deserts of Sinai. Sand clogged the action, dust fouled the chamber. In the chaos of desert warfare, the FAL's precision became its weakness. By the early 1970s, Israel transitioned to the Galil, a rifle born from the lessons and limitations of the FL. Meanwhile, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Lebanon armed their forces with Belgian-made FLs, often fighting against each other in proxy wars fueled by Cold War politics. The rifle had become a paradox, a weapon designed to unite the free world now used to divide it. But no matter where it fought, in the dense bush of Zimbabwe, the dusty streets of Beirut, or the golden dunes of Sinai, one truth remained constant. The FAL earned respect. It demanded care, but it gave loyalty. It punished neglect, but rewarded precision. It was a soldier's rifle, elegant, unyielding, and always ready. As the decades passed, the FAL's metallic echo could be heard in every kind of war, conventional, civil, or revolutionary. And yet, as newer rifles emerged, the M16, the G3, the AKM, the question lingered, could this old titan, born from the ashes of World War II, still hold its place in a world racing toward the future? The answer would come, fittingly, on an island at the edge of the world, where old empires clashed one last time over a forgotten patch of land. In 1982, the world watched as two nations, once allies, now adversaries, went to war at the edge of the South Atlantic. The Falklands conflict was short, brutal, and unforgiving. Cold winds howled over the desolate islands, and in that frozen wasteland, history delivered one of its cruelest ironies. Both sides carried the same rifle, the FN FAL. On one side stood Argentine conscripts, armed with the FN FAL Modelo 50-100, a fully automatic battle rifle built in Argentina under license. On the other, the British Army, veterans of countless colonial wars, carrying their semi-automatic L1A1 SLR, the Commonwealth variant of the same weapon. It was the only major conflict in modern history where soldiers fought and died using the same gun, built from the same design, forged by the same dream of post-war unity. The irony was poetic. A rifle born to symbolize cooperation and collective defense now tore into itself, brother against brother, bolt against bolt. In the freezing rain and choking mud of the Falklands, the FAL was both hero and villain. For Argentine troops, it offered firepower beyond anything the British expected. Its full auto capability turned ambushes into infernos of gunfire. For the British, their semi-auto L1A1s proved more stable and accurate in disciplined hands, the product of years of training and rugged design. The result was a clash not just of armies, but of philosophies. Precision versus volume, discipline versus desperation. The rifle endured everything the islands could throw at it: snow, mud, salt, and cold. It jammed at times, yes, but so did every other weapon in that bitter environment. It froze, it steamed, it fired again. And when the fighting ended, the FAL stood as the silent witness to one of the last great riflemen's wars, a war fought with iron sights, human endurance, and sheer will. After the Falklands, the world moved on. New rifles emerged, lighter, smaller, faster. The M16 family, Espra, TYT through NATO. The AK variants continued to evolve in the East. And yet, the FN FAL refused to disappear. In the decades that followed, it resurfaced everywhere. In the Balkans, in the Congo, in the streets of the Middle East. Its design, over 30 years old, was still deadly, still relevant, still respected. Even today, militias and armies alike carry it into battle, proof that true engineering outlives politics, and legacy outlasts ideology. The FAL's story is more than the history of a rifle. It's the story of a world in transition, from empires to nations, from old wars to new ones, from certainty to chaos. It served kings and revolutionaries, soldiers and rebels, heroes and villains. It united the free world, then armed its enemies. And yet, through it all, one truth endures. The FN FAL was not just the right arm of the free world. It was the arm of history itself, a weapon born in hope, tested in fire, and remembered in steel. A rifle that didn't just change how wars were fought, it changed who got to fight them.